max performance. Believe, achieve, excel. Welcome to Max Performance TV. My name is Gabriel, and today I've got a special guest with me. He goes by the name of Callum Davies. Callum, thank you so much for joining.
No, thank you very much, and good afternoon from myself, and thank you for having me.
All right, no, perfect. And we've got a few questions that I'm going to be asking you. And heck, why don't we dive right into it? So how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, Callum? Like, who is he? What does he do? And where is he currently doing it as well?
Okay, so my name's Callum Davies. I'm 28 years old. Currently, my full-time job, I work as a customer administrator, so with computers and stuff like that, in a wealth and finance company. I do that in Southampton, England, and on the sides, I like to do my coaching. I play football, so my time is taken up maybe 5 days a week with football. Big Arsenal fan, so all things football for me, really.
Oh, awesome. Now, we're going to focus a little bit on the football side of things. And how long have you been involved in the football structure? So how long have you been coaching? How long have you been playing? Are you still currently playing football as well?
Yeah, so I've been playing football now since I was about 10, 11 years old. So that in the school year in England, it'll be year six. So that's when I first joined the team. But I've been playing football, obviously, when I used to go out to play as a younger lad, as early as I can remember, most probably about 7, 8 years old. So since I've started the team, I've played it all the way through from 11. I'm now 28, so the best part of 17 years I've been involved in team sport. I currently play for a local club called Livingston Town, which is also where I've started my coaching journey with the under-18s, and that has only been around 2 years with them. But I've also done some like half-term courses, or just getting a taste for like multi-sports. Football specifically is what I was interested in. Going from there, so I still play today. So I play 3 times a week. Train on a Thursday, play a Tuesday, play on a Saturday, and in between that, I'll coach on a Thursday and on a Sunday where my lads play.
That's a lot of football. As you said, it's basically throughout the entire week, it's just football filled. So you must be quite passionate about the sports. When did you realize just how passionate you were for football?
So from a young age, I was always kind of like, I'll say the earliest time is most probably when I went to a football game. So first one I ever went to was actually Southampton FC. And I remember watching Thierry Henry there. I think it was a away game. I was only young. I used to get told off for short legs, used to kick the guy in front of me by accident because I couldn't touch the ground. So I was only a young lad.
Yeah.
And just playing in the streets and growing up watching, I think, Champions League football was on ITV back then. And it was free to watch. It was always available. And growing up watching players, like obviously Thierry Henry would say one of my favourites, Ronaldinho, Okocha in the Premier League. So from them, watching them be so creative, it's just made me want to continue to play for as long as I can, and that's why I've continued to do so now. And as I've got older and gone along, different coaches I've worked with and things like that have just kind of always been driven towards that path. I play a game called Football Manager, so I've always been quite into that side of things as well. So I'm quite obsessed with it, kind of thing.
Yeah. And before we jump into the coaching side of things as well, sorry to interrupt you there. Before we jump into the coaching side of things, you mentioned a few very specific kind of players, Ronaldinho, Thierry Henry, JJ Okocha. Those guys were very skillful players. And you watch them and you think to yourself, what these guys are doing, not just anybody can do. So is that how you modeled the way you like to play as well? Do you play in a similar position, and do you look to them to try and emulate that kind of playing style?
So, when I was younger, I used to play as a forward and a winger. But naturally, as I've got older, positions change, and I've now gone as a defender. So I've got further back. So one name I didn't mention was Ashley Cole. I've always been fond of how he defends, and Maldini and Alves. So I've always looked at players' positions from where I play and just try and, like you say, emulate or kind of mold myself how I would like to envision myself to play. Obviously, not as technically gifted, but I just see the way they play football and try and enjoy it the way they look like they enjoy it. So that's kind of, and the names that I mentioned are for me personally, from what I can see and always have seen, is how competitive, direct, determined they are on a football pitch, and you know, from what you see and how they play, it's just it's brilliant. So that's where I get a lot of my images from, and how I want to mold my potential players and team moving forward.
Okay. And just basically the reason I asked that question is because I'm usually called Messi on the field, and I believe it's because people know that I modeled myself. No, I'm totally kidding. But how about we talk a little bit about the coaching side of things? And we know that coaching can be challenging, but you've got the passion, you've got the enjoyment for it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned playing Football Manager. When did you decide that you were really interested in trying to take your coaching level a step further and actually going into it?
So, like you mentioned, I've always played the game. So I think maybe about 2.5 years ago. So I've always had the thought there, but I've never kind of had the drive to go for it. I've obviously growing up, I've had jobs here and there and stuff like that. But I'd say 2 years ago, I was just training for my team, obviously, Lymington, and I said to one of the coaches, the young lads were training before. I didn't see a coach there or anything like that. And I goes, as a joke, really. And I've said, I would do that. And he kind of gave me a little kick up the bottom to say, go on, why don't you do it then, instead of being all talk, try it. There's an opportunity there. And I've just always enjoyed it. Just even if I'm not playing, sometimes I get to join in. You can step back and coach, and I just like that whole team ethos of coaching, playing, how specific you can be.
So, Callum, I understand that your primary focus in coaching at the moment is with regards to grassroots. And we know with coaching kids or coaching the younger developed players, it can be a bit of a challenge. Luckily, you do have the passion. But when are you thinking of taking the next step and starting to look at coaching players who are more developed or players who are a little bit older?
So I'm quite lucky enough at how I got into the opportunity of grassroots with one of the older sides, being under 18s. The level isn't quite near like an academy level or anything like that, but the age group is, I've quite enjoyed the age group. I've got a plan, so I'm hoping within the next couple of years that I can maybe push on once I'm qualified to take a more developed group, shall we say, at a club. So I want to eventually maybe work for a club or, set up my own kind of coaching pathway to work with more developed players. But I'm looking at, within the next 2 to 5 years to be qualified enough to take that step.
And what are your current qualifications then, just building up on that?
So I'm currently waiting to finalise my level 2. I started that in October last year. So I've done 3 modules. I've done one in September, October, December, and then we have 2 in-sit visits, a minimum, which is basically just someone coming along, our course leader comes along and just sees how we're getting on, watches us for a coaching session and a game-based scenario. So I've had my first one, which was pre-lockdown, COVID in March. And then since then, I've literally just only been able to start back up again. So I will be looking to get the second part of that completed within the next month or two, just once that's arranged, and then hopefully push on to get my UEFA B. I know there's a waiting list for that, so I will have to actually apply for it. But it's all more experience whilst I'm waiting, so it's just, I think it's a positive for me at the minute, really.
And in terms of your coaching now, what would you say is the most difficult part of being a coach?
The one thing I don't like, it's the difficulty of it is, when you get X amount of players coming to training that really play, really want to enjoy it, and then you can only pick 11, and that's the decision making process that I find quite difficult as a coach. Is where you are going to have your, without being rude to some players, you are going to have your more technical players that play, and you've got to find that right balance for everybody, which works for everybody, and having those honest conversations, which where I'm on early in my career as a coach, that's probably what I've found most difficult at the minute, is ensuring that I'm picking the right team based on merit and ability. It's just getting that balance right, which I find difficult, the most difficult thing at the minute.
And based on that, that you've mentioned, of course, it's really difficult speaking to certain players and explaining to them why they can't be selected in the starting 11. What about their parents? We know it's grassroots, so parents do like to get involved in their children's lives and their children's sports. They're also quite passionate, if that's the word I can use. So what's your method for dealing with a disgruntled or unhappy parent about the fact that their child hasn't had enough playing time or an ideal amount of playing time?
So I'm quite lucky that, there's two of us that do it now. So when I first took it on, it was just me, and I didn't have as many players to look after. So it was a little bit of an issue last year, but more so this season, when I think we've got, at the start of pre-season, we almost had 30 players come, which was quite a lot for under 18. So considering we only have one team, and we just made sure that we put out a message at the start of the season, before pre-season starts, like, we know we've got a number of players. We're going to try and make it as fair as possible. So we put out a message directly to all the parents beforehand. As of yet, we haven't had any disgruntled parents, but we do try and communicate as much as possible. We've had friendlies, so the rotational kind of thing, putting players in different positions, as much game time as possible, ball rolling. I've had an experience just recently, which was an issue with a player in terms of attitude. Had to have a discussion with his parent and just say, he is being picked because he has been at training, he is an exceptional talent, but there's some attitude issues. So we've had to take him off. And now I would say that's probably my most challenging parent-coach relationship that I've had to deal with to date. And that was, you've got to find the balance of saying, look, this is, I basically said, if that was in a classroom with teachers and they were at school, there would be some sort of consequence. And at the end of the day, without being rude, this is our classroom and there's also rules here. And, we have to get that balance right of just making them aware that what's acceptable and what's not in terms of attitude and behaviour, not only to your coaches, but your peers as well. So I thought that was a very difficult conversation to have with a parent. Don't think they were too happy, but it's like you say, they are passionate and everyone wants to see their child play and get the right amount of time. But as they get older, these decisions become more difficult. Luckily, we get roll on roll off subs at our level, so it makes it a little bit easier. So that kind of helps that issue of playing time. But the higher you get and the more older you get, it's going to go down to 3 substitutes at some point when you're 18. So
And sorry, please continue, please.
No, I was going to say it's one of those that I would say I'm premature in my coaching journey. So I'm happy it's happened sooner rather than later. I'm still learning from these situations. I'm learning from coaching them, and I can only improve and continue to get it right or change my way of dealing with it. So it's all a learning process.
Okay, and just building on that as well, you mentioned about the child having a bit of attitude problem. I say child, let's say player having a bit of attitude problem. So that of course goes against some of the values that you have for your team. What are some values that you like to instill in your team that you'd like for them to take away when they go home or when they're on the field or even when they're at training?
For me, I think the biggest part of your values comes without a ball. As how you behave as a young individual at that age. I remember being that age, and it's difficult with your emotions and how you act on those. So I just try and promote them to be positive. There's nothing wrong with giving criticism, but just how you go about it, how you speak to people, the respect that you have for yourself, your teammates. You've got to be dedicated to what you do, whether that be football or another sport that you're playing alongside it, to give it 100%, because it's what makes you happy. That's what the main thing that I try and promote to them is your happiness. And are you happy doing this? Is that what you want to do? Kind of thing. Hard work, obviously, dedication to what you do, respect. I try and think of things that they can take away off the football pitch. Your self-confidence, you've got to really work it, building yourself up, try and get that resilience in them and things like that. So my values of just trying to be development and progression as a player, but as a person also.
And also still jumping on the same topic of discussion, what would you say then, you talking about developing a player, what would you consider to be an excellent player, or what fills your description of a good player?
So I'd like to, for my description personally, I think, players you train. I like seeing a good attitude in training, working hard and just the little things, if you're being a leader, go and helping your teammates and, trying to help them. If you are one of the more technical, better players, taking time out to help other people in your team, I think it's important. Really being a leader. Because technical ability, obviously some people are born with it and it can be coached along the way. But I just like to see them consistency in their behaviours and their ability on and off the field, and people that enjoy coming to training, have a smile on their face, willing to help out, ask questions, because that only helps me learn as well. So I like people to be inquisitive, curious about why I'm doing this, why I'm doing that. It gives me a chance to explain and grow along with them. So as long as they have their own set of values and quite individual themselves, I think that makes a good player. Just have a basic knowledge of the game, obviously alongside it. I think questions are important, asking why we're doing this to try and grow. So
now thinking about all of that as well, what's your process for preparing your team for a game? It seems you've got the values, trying to instill them down already. Now for the technical side of things, what's your process? How's the training regime before a game? All of those things, motivational speaking. How does that work? What do you like to do before a game?
So before a game, on a Thursday, we'll train naturally a few days before. So what I would do is, I haven't had much time this year because we've only just got back into it, but speaking from previously, we would work on something on a Thursday evening, game related obviously from the previous week, on the negatives, shall we say, or the room for improvement points. Technical, so I'd put on a session and practices that are relatable to that and how we would improve that on a match day. So we'd talk about it in training. I'd ask for their opinion to see if we're on the same page. On a Sunday when we play, I'll make sure we get a dynamic warm-up, get us ready for the game, switched on, nice and early, all set up so they know that, when you're here, we're ready to go. And this is where it starts. You get in your competitive game modes, do a warm up with them. So I try to get them to be on the move and listening whilst we're talking. So we're constantly doing stuff. And then I just, I'll try and have the floor open as much as possible. So I will say to them and give them little reminders. We've worked on this on Thursday. Can we try and do this, and set little goals for individual players? I'll go around, give them individual tasks when they're doing their own little bit kind of thing. And these are just methods that I've only recently kind of picked up as a coach from learning on my level 2, So I'm just slowly starting to put them into my regime as a coach on how I prepare for a game and then how I would like them to prepare. So things are getting a little bit more professional as we go along, considering it's still grassroots. So I don't want to be too regimented or structured. I feel like they want to have the fun element, so I let them do that little bit just before. And then it's into game mode. I have a little speech with them. I'm not so good at motivational speaking just yet, but I do try and look at like books of self-discipline and confidence and just try and, positive reinforcement for them, letting them know that you are good enough. I see you do it in training. Go and be creative. No one makes mistakes for a reason. On mistakes, on purpose, sorry, shall I say. And just let them know this is here where you try things, and this is a playing field where I trust you to do the right thing, and then we'll go forwards. If there's something wrong, I'll say it. If there's something wrong, we'll try and improve it. So it's not, that's wrong, that's rubbish. There's a structure and a process that I want to build with you as an individual and a player. So,
and how would you say you've improved or learning the modules with the level 2s? How would you say there's been an improvement in your coaching ability? What differences have you seen from before and afterwards?
So I wasn't able to do it in my own kind of county, so Hampshire. So I had to travel to Aldershot and do it at the Army FA, and they were very, very regimented, specific, great detail. And from my level 2, when I started last year, just putting on sessions to put on sessions, I've now started to obviously structure my sessions a lot more, writing down, we do session plans anyway, but I'm starting to link things up a little bit more. I'm using different coaching techniques. So it's like a whole part of whole, where we go in just to a game related practice. If we're not kind of getting what the gist of it is, we take them out, we do a more specific practice for what the actual session aim is, and then back into it, and just using different methods. I've used a carousel method in parts of my training, where there's like different parts of the session. We split the groups up, 4 doing one thing, then 4 was like a rotational kind of session. Just like little details like that, it's something that I'm starting to take a lot more care with how I coach, the things I say. I've got to be very clear with how I communicate. So because I don't get very long with them, I've got to make sure that, I was never really aware of the 70% ball rolling rule, which we do in the FA, which is we want the ball rolling as much as possible rather than standing around just talking aimlessly. So just my communication has improved a lot. I wasn't very confident speaking in front of a crowd, but it's getting better. A little bit more loud and clear with what I'd like, and even with just writing things down, just my game notes and my game knowledge is getting better just watching people, and from having these modules that I've been through, just the preparation, the planning, and then the actual review, the self-reflection, which is the hardest part, because you need another set of eyes kind of just to see what you missed. So I've just taken all of that on board, and it's honestly, it's not getting easier, but it's just becoming more enjoyable because it's so much more specific. There's so much to it, But yeah, I think that's how I've improved, is the self-reflection and the structure of myself and my team.
Now, how about you being a player? What would you say being a player has helped you as well in your coaching element? Like, has it helped you see things differently, or do you not really see much of a difference from the playing side and coaching side of things?
It's a little bit of a mixed one for me, really. I know that, the game's always different watching it from the side, and I've had a bit of time recently to do that. But luckily, being a player still, and playing for so long now, when I am coaching, I can still use relevant situations that I've been in maybe the week before, or it's quite relatable for me to use an example for them. I know that some lads come and watch our first team where I play for the club that I coach. They come and watch, they ask questions, and it's easy to relate with them. If, for example, I was at a different club and I was playing and they didn't get to watch, I do believe that playing just gives me a bit more of an insight as to what a player needs in terms of, I'm still playing, so what would I like as a player? I always ask myself, would I enjoy taking part in that session? What would I learn from it? Will they learn the same as I would learn from it, kind of thing? So I think it goes very well hand in hand. I'm glad that I'm able to do it at the minute. So
now,
it's a positive.
What about you as a player? Has coaching helped you develop as a player, as much like playing has helped you develop as a coach as well?
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand, because now when I watch a game of football on the TV, or I'm watching my team play, I'm currently out injured, but when you go and watch, I'm thinking, okay, I've coached, so I say that, I know that my position now needs to be, I could be there a little second earlier, and then it's a shorter recovery run kind of thing. Like those little small things that kind of get overlooked. I think, once I get back into playing, the position I play, which is centre half or right back, so like just being defensively switched on or covering your man with depths and angles, which are really important and part of your structure. I think I will, once I go back into playing, I will, pick up on those things. I hope, anyway.
And what would you say then is the most important attributes that you need to have to be a successful coach?
I think adaptability. Personally, I think, I use that word in terms of, I find it quite important, because as a coach, you have to adapt to your surroundings, your numbers, your players. You might not have your weather conditions. Some people's personalities are different. You're always going to be no 2 weeks or 2 sessions that should be the same. There's always going to be some sort of element that's going to catch you off guard. And you got to just be able to adapt to most situations and other techniques. You might go to another club where you've got a load of visual learners that can see off a whiteboard, the younger children. So then when you go to older adults, they might not need that same treatment, but then how do you get through to them? They might just need a quick message audio kind of thing. You've got to be able to change up your own style and always be willing to learn. So, I think that's important to me as a good coach, is the adaptability, being willing to learn.
A great answer. I do agree that adaptability is important, as you mentioned, particularly with grassroots players, because that's when they're all also still learning, and there's so many changes that's going to be made. So you need to be able to adapt to those changes as well, because at the end of the day, you are trying to develop a player. You're trying to make them be the best possible player they can be. And the only way you can do that is if you can look at all the angles and just make sure that everything is working to their benefit, if that's a way that I can put that. And my final question for you now, with your coaching career specifically, in about 10 years from now, where would you like to be?
The dream, it would be to, be in league football, to be a coach or a manager in league football, just to be professional. Fortunately, the playing will never get there. So as a coach, I just want to be involved in the game, and whatever position that may be, I'd love to be in league football. The dream would obviously be to be at the very top end up in the Premier League. Don't get me wrong, but just to get my foot in the door at conference level up to League Two, and then once I'm in the door, for me, I've just seen possibilities are endless. I'd love to be a coach or a manager at a professional level, with an independent business alongside it. I'd love to have, you know, my own 4G pitch and a classroom to teach other coaches, stuff like that. I just want to be able to give back and be at the top end of the game at some point.
And I know I said it was the last question, but just to build on what you have said there, scenario, league football, Premier League football, as an Arsenal fan, you're offered the job at Tottenham. Are you taking it?
Oh, do you know what? I don't. So I sit here now and say no, but you know, I don't know if it's your dreams have got to sometimes outweigh. It's a tough question.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about that and get back to you.
Fair enough. You know, I'll tell you straight up. I'm a Manchester United fan, but as a player, if Manchester City come calling, then I'm not hesitating. I'm there. You know.
That's fair.
Yeah, but I do understand it's a difficult choice to make. That
is.
Yeah, but Callum, thanks so much for taking the time. It's been enjoyable and good to learn about you, good to learn about your values, and just good to learn about what you hold dear to you with regards to football and coaching as well.
No, thank you very much for having me. Honestly, I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No.
Pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Say. We'll chat.
Yeah, take care.
Cheers.